Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm talking about a film that's actually based off of a best-selling book by Andy Weir called Project Hail Mary. This is a film about a character that's played by Ryan Gosling that finds out that basically the sun doesn't have a lot of time until it completely dies out. There's some type of a water virus that's basically going to wash it out over time, and it's going to basically wipe out the crops and all this other stuff. So basically, NASA plans this big mission for some recruits where it's a um, somebody that's very knowledgeable in science, somebody that's knowledgeable in engineering, and somebody that's knowledgeable in another area, and basically for several years until basically they can get into this alternate universe that basically has a better sun and a better planet to live on and all this other stuff. So they basically need three, not really even volunteers, but just like three people that they feel are best for the job, and are going to send them there to see if there's even a chance that they can send basically the survivors of Earth to this planet when our own sun dies out eventually. And so basically, Ryan Gosling is sent there on this mission. Something happens to these other two people that NASA tried to recruit as well, and basically he has a hard time making it. He's basically in this long sleep cosis that basically makes his memory very hard to jive as to what exactly happened to him and what his mission was originally. And basically on his way to finding this other universe, this other sun, this other planet, he becomes friends with this rock creature that he becomes friends with, who also, like him, is on a mission to basically find life for his own planet as well. These other rock creatures that are also trying to find a better sun and a better planet to live on. And so, over the course of this film, the Ryan Gosling character has to figure out how exactly is he going to be able to get all these people from Earth who are trying to get to this new planet that's going to be a better fit for everybody, and a better sun for everybody to be, for the crops and all this other stuff to basically move forward with, and how exactly are they going to have to plan to get the other people of Earth to this other planet to basically keep living on as a species. So over the course of this film, he has to figure out what exactly he has to do to achieve this mission. But overall, guys, I really enjoyed this film quite a bit. Project Hail Mary is one of those classic science fiction films where you feel good by watching it. You feel also kind of a little bit more intelligent because it's good about explaining all the stuff that you need to know to basically find out what these characters have to achieve in order to live in a better planet and have exposure to a better sun, and what exactly needs to happen for everything to kind of go through that the way that NASA was hoping it for it to go through. And yeah, it's just a very fun film to get through. Very scientific film for those who like science. It also makes science look more fun than it probably feels like in a classroom somewhere in like a high school or a college classroom. Um, so it's just a very fun film to watch. Definitely a lot of positive things to say about it. A couple of negatives I'm going to bring in when I get to my negative section as well. But let's go over some positives and negatives as to why I really enjoyed Project Hail Mary. While there's also a couple things I think that it could have done better with as well. So from my positives of the movie, I thought the Ryland Grace and Rocky character had great screen chemistry together. Whenever the film focuses on the two of them trying to find this planet, trying to find this other sun that they have to get to, the film is just a lot of fun to watch. They do have great screen chemistry. Their humor back and forth was very effective. They also used an animatronic puppet for most of the scenes involving the Rocky character, so that was a lot of fun to watch. They also shot the film on film, so it's not, even though the scenes that I'm sure come off as digital and they had to convert over digitally eventually, they did have to shoot the film first on film to really get the achievement and the effect of a classic 70s science fiction film. Um, but it was great seeing this Rylan and Rocky character have such great screen chemistry, because if the film didn't work without them, the film probably wouldn't have worked at all. I also like how this film is just an overall grand space adventure. It really is a film where we do eventually find out what exactly the Ryan Gosling character is doing. We do get to see all these sequences of them, um, trying to basically um, get a way to make sure that people have a way of getting onto the planet and making sure that all resources are to the best of their ability and all this other stuff. And it really does feel like this grand space adventure because the film is about 2.5 hours and you do kind of feel that length at certain points in time. But the fact that the film does have such a positive vibe, it does have characters that we can relate to and have a positive opinion about, and the fact that we are on this big space adventure with them, it all just kind of adds up very beautifully to a film that very much earned the space and the adventure part of its story. I also thought the whole structure of the story of watching this character awaken from his rest in space to having flashbacks as to how he got there, and kind of that back and forth of things that we need to know while things that he's kind of slowly kind of earning his memory back to find out what exactly he's doing on this mission. I thought that overall story structure I thought was very effective for a story like this, and because they have so much to cover from this novel that I'm sure was also very long, um, how they were able to kind of fit everything in within 2.5 hours and still have a very satisfying adventure overall, I thought was also very well handled. So the idea of kind of having a space rest awakening to having flashbacks that kind of have the character along with the viewer slowly catch up to kind of where everything is going, where everything is at, I thought was kind of the right way to handle a story like this. And they did get Phil Lord and Chris Miller of the Lego Movie to direct this film. And you could definitely hear and see their creative touches throughout the film as well. There's a scene where Ryan Gosling and this government agent basically are playing bowling with like these tinfoil boxes and like the thing that they could use as a bowling ball and stuff like that. That really makes the film feel more creative than if just any other director stepped in and did the film themselves. There's also a lot of sequences of like Ryan Gosling finding a way to play basketball while he's stuck in the spaceship and stuff like that. So there's stuff like that that feels more creative than if just any other director were to do it. So I liked how Phil Lord and Chris Miller add their ambiguity, added their creativity, added a sense of their own creativity that they brought to the 21 Jump Street films and to the Lego Movie and other stuff that they also worked on. So seeing their sensibilities work their way into the screenplay was a lot of fun to watch in this film as well. And like I brought up earlier, the film is shot on film, and it also has a animatronic puppet for the Rocky character. So just seeing both of those things happen in a big budget film like this was very refreshing to me. It does show that the way that cinema was made, several decades ago is still happening now with shooting on film reels and getting puppeteering and animatronics on screen in the film rather than just relying on CGI to do everything. It is refreshing to see classic cinema elements working their way into a modern blockbuster like this. But for my negatives of the movie, though, there are a couple of major story jumps that happen that basically the film tries to do to try to prevent it from feeling like it's longer than it really is because they have so much material to cover and because they don't want to go over 2.5 hours. But because some of those story jumps are just so huge, from waking up from a coma to doing something on this planet that we could potentially live on eventually, having such a huge jump from something that huge, and it does that with a couple of other major plot points as well, does feel a little uneven while you're watching the film. So it's one of those things where if you haven't read the book, if you're completely new to the story of Project Hail Mary like I was, I'm sure several other viewers are, it does feel a little jarring jumping from this one completely different thing over to this other completely different thing that this Ryan Gosling character has to figure out while he's up in space. So having those story jumps does make the story come off as a little uneven to me. I also thought some of the closer to the third act of the film felt like the film had a hard time finding a way to end off kind of what the story was trying to say by the end of it. It really was one of those things where they shot like 5 different endings, and so rather than just choosing the best possible ending to go with, it felt like they just kind of plugged in all 5 of those endings rather than just going with one really good one towards the end of the movie. And that's really where you kind of felt the whole 2.5 hour run is they had a hard time to kind of finding out where they wanted the story to end, and it did come off as a little bit like, let's, rather than just choosing one good ending to go with, let's choose all five of these. And it did feel a little, once again, a little bit jarring to see all those endings play out rather than just one really good one. I also thought just more backstory with the Ryland Grace character I thought could have happened too. Yeah, we find out what he did for a living. Yeah, we find out a little bit about his romantic life and how it didn't work out for him, and how he really doesn't have a lot of family to go to whenever, like Christmas and Thanksgiving and all that stuff happens throughout the year. Um, but there's just all overall things about him. Like, it's just one of those things where I wouldn't be able to describe to you what his fears are. I wouldn't be able to describe to you what his favorite food was. I wouldn't be able to describe to you how he would feel around somebody that isn't exactly scientifically knowledgeable about certain things. It's just one of those things where, because the film needs him so much for all these big plot points they're trying to cover over 2.5 hours, there's just not a lot of opportunities for us as an audience to learn about him as a character rather than just how he feels about the mission, how he feels about certain scenarios. And overall, it just kind of makes him feel a little cardboardy as a character. It just makes him feel like almost anybody that has a knowledge of science could have been in his position. And the film doesn't really have has a specific reason as to why it has to be him that's doing it necessarily, rather than just he has a lot of knowledge as to this water virus thing that's infecting the sun that they're trying to figure out how to resolve. Um, so I thought just more time with his backstory, I think, would have fleshed him out as a character better in the story like this. And also, there's some flashback scenes that just happen way too late into the film. It's just one of those things where, when we do get into the 90-minute mark and later, they do try to have even more flashback scenes again. And there's just certain times in the story where it just feels like we're kind of too far ahead into the story to go all the way back into the timeline, into learning something additional that happened to the Ryland Grace character that happened that early on into the timeline of the story. So once again, just some of the editing felt a little jarring to me, unfortunately. But overall, guys, I'm going to give Project Hail Mary an 8.5 out of 10. It's a very enjoyable film. There's tons of things to love about it. It's just a very fun, classic science fiction story that has a sense of humor to it, has a lot of fun to it. Does have a lot of science-y things about it if you're into the whole science field and all that kind of fun stuff. Like I said, a couple of negatives along the way that prevent this from being a perfect film, but there's just tons of things about it too that I really like about it, and would highly recommend that you go out and see it if you like science fiction stories like this. So it's 8.5 out of 10 for me. Really enjoyed Project Hail Mary. I highly recommend seeing it.